Picture yourself standing on the edge of a vast, untamed wilderness, where the air hums with the scent of damp earth and the distant call of a deer echoes through towering trees. 10,000 years ago, our ancestors weren't just surviving in this world. They were thriving, their footprints marking nearly every corner of the globe, from icy plains to sunlit river valleys. This was a time when the earth was shaking off the chill of the last ice age, when humanity was beginning to carve out a future that would one day lead to cities, empires, and us. Welcome to the Human Wild, where we dive into the raw, vibrant stories of our ancestors. Their tools, their art, their triumphs, and their struggles. Today we're stepping back 10,000 years to explore what humans were doing across this planet, not as a history lesson, but as a journey into the heart of who we are. So pull up a spot by the fire, and let's wander into a world where every day was an adventure. The Earth back then was in the midst of a great awakening. The last glacial period, that long, cold grip of the Ice Age, had held sway for tens of thousands of years, cloaking much of the northern hemisphere in ice. But by 10,000 years ago, the planet was warming, the ice sheets retreating, revealing new landscapes, lush forests, sprawling wetlands, rivers teeming with fish. This wasn't just a change in the scenery. It was a revolution for our species. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, had left Africa some 70,000 years ago, spreading to every continent except Antarctica. Along the way, they mingled with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and maybe other hominins we haven't yet discovered, weaving their DNA into ours. The useful bits of that ancient interbreeding stuck around, helping humans adapt to new climates and challenges, while the rest faded into the genetic background. By 20,000 years ago, we were just about everywhere, from the steppes of Asia to the coasts of Australia, ready to seize the opportunities of a warming world. The climate set the stage for everything that followed. The Ice Age wasn't a single frozen moment. It ebbed and flowed, driven by subtle shifts in Earth's orbit and tilt, known as the Milankovitch cycles. These changes brought sunlight back to the northern lands, melting the glaciers. By 11,700 years ago, the glacial period was officially over, giving way to the Holocene, the warmer era we still live in today. As the ice melted, sea levels rose, sometimes in dramatic surges. In just 160 years, the oceans climbed about 24 feet, swallowing vast stretches of land. One of those places was Doggerland, a massive plain that once connected the British Isles to northern Europe. Imagine a landscape of rivers and marshes, teeming with life where the Maglemosian people thrived. These folks were descendants of the Magdalenian hunters who once chased mammoths and cave bears. But as the megafauna dwindled and the climate warmed, they adapted, becoming master hunter-gatherers. The Maglemosians didn't just hunt big game. They embraced a broader way of life, crafting tiny, razor-sharp stone tools called microliths, perfect for tipping arrows or spears. They worked with bone and antler, too, shaping harpoons, axes, and digging sticks. Picture them moving through dense forests, stalking deer, spearing fish in clear streams, or setting traps for rabbits. They hunted everything from bison to reindeer, which still roamed widely across northern Europe. A recent discovery off Germany's coast gives us a glimpse of their ingenuity. A kilometer-long stone wall, likely built to funnel reindeer into traps or ambush points. Imagine a group of hunters, their breath visible in the cool morning air, coordinating silently to outsmart their prey, using the landscape itself as a tool. This wasn't just about survival, it was about strategy, community, and creativity. Some of these people may have settled in semi-permanent villages, while others followed the seasons, moving with the animals. And they weren't always peaceful. Archaeologists have found round, drilled stones from this time, almost certainly mace heads, the earliest clear evidence of weapons designed for warfare. It's a reminder that even 10,000 years ago, humans were as capable of conflict as they were of cooperation. As we move north to Scandinavia, the story gets even wilder. For years, experts thought the Arctic Circle was too harsh for human life back then, but the Kamsa culture proved them wrong. These bold pioneers reached the northern reaches of Norway, even the province of Finnmark over 10,000 years ago. How? Likely by water, navigating the coasts in simple boats or rafts. They were coastal experts, feasting on shellfish and seals, but some ventured deep into Norway's mountainous interior, leaving behind rock art that captures their world. Carvings of animals, hunters, and scenes of daily life, etched with a precision that feels like a snapshot of their souls. Now, let's drift south to the Iberian Peninsula, where the Azilian culture was leaving its mark. These folks had a passion for art, painting and engraving rocks with vivid images of deer, goats, and even scenes of conflict. One cave painting shows a group of archers facing off, a rare glimpse of violence from this time. They crafted beautifully made harpoons, perfect for fishing along the coast, and their art suggests they had a sweet tooth for honey. One depiction shows a figure gathering it, a small human detail that makes them feel so close to us. Around the Mediterranean, in Italy and the Balkans, the late Epigravettian cultures carried on traditions from 30,000 years ago, hunting reindeer and wild boar with deadly tools made of microliths and backed blades. At Mura Cave in Bulgaria, paintings from 8,000 to 10,000 years ago show hunters, animals, and what might be religious ceremonies. One figure pierced by an arrow, hinting at conflict or sacrifice. These European groups were part of the Western hunter-gatherer genetic family, with olive to dark skin, dark hair, and often striking blue eyes, a far cry from modern Europeans, whose genetics were shaped by later migrations. As we move east to modern Poland and the southern Baltic, we meet the Swiderian culture, a mix of Western and Eastern hunter-gatherers. They lived in small, semi-settled villages near lakes and rivers, crafting stone tools and bone points, possibly with the help of early hunting dogs. Their techniques, like pressure flaking, came from as far away as Mongolia, showing how ideas traveled across vast distances. And here's a quirky twist. What we call a moose in North America, they called an elk, a mix-up that confused early European settlers. It's a small reminder of how language shapes our view of the world, even back then. As we leave the forests and coasts of Europe, our journey takes us to Western Asia, where the seeds of something monumental were being sown. The Fertile Crescent was a land of opportunity, its soils rich, its rivers brimming with life. Long before 10,000 years ago, as early as 23,000 years ago, people along the Sea of Galilee were grinding wild grasses into flour with basalt mortars, a painstaking process that made seeds easier to digest. Picture a family gathered around a stone, grinding grains, perhaps sharing stories as the rhythmic sound filled the air. They hunted gazelles, deer and wild boar, and gathered fruits and nuts, living off the land's abundance. By 15,000 years ago, the Natufian culture emerged, taking this lifestyle to new heights. These weren't your typical hunter-gatherers. They settled down, building permanent or semi-permanent homes thanks to the region's bounty. Their settlements were complex, made of limestone slabs, shaped rocks, and mud bricks, with spaces for storing food and holding rituals. They even created cemeteries, a sign of their deep connection to the land and their ancestors. The Natufians were artists, too, carving stone and bone into intricate objects. One piece, the Ein Sakri lovers, dated to 11,000 years ago, captures two figures in an intimate embrace, the oldest known depiction of its kind. It's a powerful reminder that love, connection, and humanity were as real then as they are now. A cold snap called the Younger Dryas around 12,900 years ago might have pushed them further, reducing wild cereals and forcing them to plant and tend seeds deliberately. By 11,500 years ago, crops like emmer wheat, barley, peas, and flax were being cultivated across the Levant. These plants weren't just food. They were versatile, turned into bread, beer, or soups when mixed with legumes. Animals joined the fold, too. Dogs had been companions for over 20,000 years, but now pigs, goats, and sheep were domesticated around 11,000 years ago, followed by cattle in Turkey by 10,500 years ago. These people weren't just hunting anymore. They were building a life where food was under their control. Jericho, one of the most famous settlements, was thriving by 11,000 years ago. Imagine circular homes of clay and straw, hearths glowing within, surrounded by a massive stone wall 12 feet high and 6 feet wide. A 28-foot tower with 22 steps stood tall, perhaps for defense or to protect against floods. The people here created haunting art, plastering human skulls with shells for eyes, likely honoring their ancestors. Estimates of Jericho's population range from a few hundred to a few thousand, a bustling community for its time. Further east, Göbekli Tepe was rewriting what we thought hunter-gatherers could do. From 11,500 to 10,000 years ago, this site featured massive limestone pillars carved with animals and symbols, built by people who hadn't yet embraced agriculture. Domestic structures and water systems suggest it was a permanent settlement, part of a network of 11 similar sites called Taz Tepeler. In Mesopotamia, villages like Jarmo housed up to 150 people, growing crops and domesticating animals, laying the groundwork for the first civilizations. A copper pendant from northern Iraq, dated to 10,700 years ago, hints at early metallurgy, a spark of innovation that would ignite the future. Our story now sweeps us to Africa, where a continent of contrasts was unfolding. The Sahara, far from the desert we know today, was a lush paradise during the African humid period, from 14,500 to 5,000 years ago. Lakes sparkled, rivers flowed, and grasslands supported herds of elephants, giraffes, and antelopes. Crocodiles and hippos swam where sand now lies, a testament to the region's fertility. The Nile Delta, always a lush hotspot, was even more productive, supporting communities that fished, hunted, and gathered wild grasses with sickles and grinding stones. These tools created food surpluses, allowing some groups to settle before farming began. The Capsian culture, in modern Tunisia and Algeria, was a standout, hunting oryx and antelope but also smaller prey like hares and snails. Their toolkits were sophisticated projectile points, stone axes, bone fishing hooks, and they used ostrich eggs as water bottles, a clever trick for a mobile life. Their shallow graves, often with pottery and tools, show a culture that valued its dead. The Capsians and others left behind breathtaking rock art. At the Cave of Swimmers in Libya, 10,000-year-old paintings show figures swimming alongside giraffes and hippos, a clue to the Sahara's watery past. Tassili Enajur in Algeria boasts 15,000 engravings and paintings, depicting hunters, dancers, and shaman-like figures, one with mushrooms sprouting from its body, hinting at spiritual rituals. West Africa, with its expanded rainforests, saw people crafting pottery and possibly inventing bows by 11,400 years ago. They domesticated oil palm and raffia palm around 11,000 years ago, using their oil, fruit, and fibers. At Gabbaro in Niger, a graveyard with over 180 burials, some 10,000 years old, held pottery and tools, a sign of a complex culture. In East Africa, the Ethiopian highlands were wet and forested, where people collected grains and domesticated donkeys by 9,000 years ago. But violence marked this region, too, at Nadirik in Kenya, where 27 people, including children, were killed in a brutal attack, their bones bearing the scars of arrows and clubs. Central and South Africa were home to Pygmy and Khoisan populations, each with ancient roots. The Pygmies, adapted to forests with their short stature, split from other Africans 50,000 to 90,000 years ago. The Khoisan, even older, dominated southern Africa, leaving rock art at Bushman's Kloof, depicting elephants and trance-like figures, suggesting shamanism. Their stories, stretching back 150,000 years, are a deep thread in humanity's tapestry. As we leave Africa, we're drawn to Asia, where another chapter of innovation and artistry awaits. The vast continent of Asia was a mosaic of cultures, from the river valleys of China to the islands of Southeast Asia. In the Pearl River Valley, rice cultivation was underway by 10,000 years ago, a slow shift from harvesting wild grains to planting them deliberately. Millet was domesticated in northern China, possibly by Sino-Tibetan speakers, providing a reliable food source. Pottery, invented in China over 20,000 years ago, was now widespread, shaped into vessels that doubled as art. In Korea, rice farmers lived in pit houses, fishing the seas with nets weighed down by limestone sinkers. The Jaman culture in Japan thrived across the archipelago, hunting deer, boar, and bears, and fishing for salmon and shellfish. Their middens, piled high with shells, show a love for the coast, and their pottery and stone tools reflect a sedentary life without farming. In the Indian subcontinent, zebu cattle were domesticated in eastern India by 10,500 years ago, while Murgar in Pakistan saw pottery, wheat, and herd animals by 10,000 years ago. Hunter-gatherers along the Sonlang coast hunted wolves, rhinos, and deer with microlithic tools. The Konkan petroglyphs, over 10,000 years old, depict sharks, tigers, and anthropomorphic figures, while Bhimbetkha's caves show hunting scenes and possible tribal warfare. In Southeast Asia, chickens were domesticated from red jungle fowl in Thailand, a brilliant adaptation to their breeding cycles. The Negritos, New Guineans, and Aboriginal Australians, descendants of early migrants, lived across the Sunda Shelf and Sahul. New Guinea saw early agriculture with sugarcane and bananas by 9,000 years ago, its rugged terrain fostering unique cultures. In Australia, rising seas submerged coastal lands, sparking conflict depicted in Arnhem Land's battle scene rock art. Aboriginal stories of submerged islands, told for over 10,000 years, show a deep memory of change. They hunted with boomerangs and woomeras, their Dreamtime myths inspiring art at Kakadu, depicting heroes and extinct animals like the thylacine. Siberia's post-glacial landscape saw new cultures mixing with ancient North Eurasians, spreading pottery and hunting reindeer and moose with microblades. Some may have hunted late-surviving mammoths, clinging on in remote areas until 4,000 years ago. As we cross the submerged Beringia, we reach the Americas, where a new chapter unfolds. The Americas were a land of vast plains, towering mountains, and endless coasts, where humans had lived for millennia. In the far north, coastal people fished and hunted seals, possibly using boats, as seen at On Your Knees Cave in Alaska. Interior hunters chased bison, elk, and caribou, using leaf-shaped points and microblades. Most megafauna were gone by 10,000 years ago, but Bison antiquus dominated the Great Plains, hunted in dramatic buffalo jumps like Bonfire Shelter. Kennewick Man, a 9,000-year-old skeleton, bore a projectile point in his pelvis, his diet of marine mammals hinting at coastal travels. Fort Rock's 10,000-year-old sagebrush sandals show the daily lives of families, while La Brea Woman's fractured skull suggests a violent end. Spirit Cave's 9,400-year-old mummy, wrapped in rabbit skin, links to Native American tribes. In the Great Lakes, copper was hammered into tools by 9,500 years ago, predating Old World smelting. The Southeast's Dalton culture crafted fluted points and adzes, their Sloan site cemetery holding prestige tools. Mesoamerica saw squash and teosinte domesticated, setting the stage for corn. In South America, megafauna hunters with fishtail points vanished by 10,900 years ago, replaced by gatherers and early farmers cultivating potatoes in the Andes. Cueva de los Monos hand stencils and hunting scenes capture Patagonia's vibrant life. This journey through the world of 10,000 years ago reveals a humanity at a crossroads, planting crops, crafting art, and facing conflict and change. From Europe's forests to Asia's rivers, from Africa's green Sahara to the Americas' plains, our ancestors were inventors, artists, and survivors, their legacy echoing in us. What would you ask them if you could sit by their fire? Drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe to The Human Wild for more stories from our untamed past. I'll see you next time for another adventure into the heart of humanity.